Hello everyone, this is NEGTV and today you are watching Top Gaming News. Let's get started. Once upon a time, the horror genre was going through hard times. Favorite franchises, with rare exceptions, either went into freeze or quiescence, or the developers simply lost interest in the genre. Indie releases were not of high quality, and endless attempts to replicate the success of PT or ran into a cliché rake, and the big studios just decided that you don't make a lot of money from horror games. Things have changed over the past few years, thanks in large part to the absolute resurgence of Resident Evil. We are now in the second golden era of survival horror. Releases have rained down on us in a dark, horror-filled rain, and even better, more scary games await us in the near future. In this video, I will talk about the 10 most important horror films, both those whose release date is already known, and a couple of dark horses whose existence is in some question. So let's take a look in a little more detail. The Last of Us Part 1. In many ways, the remake of the iconic game didn't make a good first impression. I still firmly believe that Sony and Naughty Dog made it solely to keep developers busy. However, even after a not-so-impressive gameplay demo, things can still change on release, and it depends on the feel of the gameplay, well, in the sense of how this remake remaster plays. The re-release will slightly expand the original game mechanics of The Last of Us, which, moreover, will be complemented by gameplay improvements from the second part. Attention was paid to character models and facial animations. The authors promise that now you can catch even the smallest changes in emotions and facial expressions. The remake added AI opponents and partners from the second part. Due to this, the battle should become more intense, and the allies will begin to behave more logically and, for example, can hide if they realize that they will soon be in the field of view of the enemy. However, this is practically invisible. For example, artificial intelligence behaves in much the same way as before. Melee animations, for example, are the same as in the original game. Although, indeed, they now look smoother. The studio did not change the very structure of the levels, however, the locations in the world as a whole became more detailed due to improved lighting, an advanced system of vegetation and effects. The game also slightly reworked the physics. Bullets can now destroy concrete and other environmental objects. From the second part, the mode with permanent death and crafting migrated to the remaked IN edition. There will be an improved photo mode, weapon skins, and a mode with a detailed view of models. Other new features include some much-needed additional clothing skins for Joel and Ellie, a separate menu where you can view 3D models in full detail, and enhanced accessibility options. So, in Part 1, it will be possible to turn on the voice acting of all cutscenes, and then the announcer will describe everything that happens on the screen. There will also be a single life mode, as well as a speedrun mode in which the player will constantly have a timer. The remake will support DualSense features like vibration and adaptive triggers. I am sure that the remake remaster is unlikely to become a completely different game, as it was with the second res. The mediocre graphics upgrade and the $70 price tag are still there, but I'm hoping the gameplay can still make up for those shortcomings. If everything goes smoothly, and fears are in vain, then a truly high-quality and exciting game awaits us. Fort Solis, a third-person sci-fi single-player horror game. Developed by Fallen Leaf on Unreal Engine 5, it is described as a mixture of Dead Space and the movie Moon 2112. This is a third-person thriller set on the far side of Mars. Engineer Jack Leary receives a typical distress signal at Fort Solis, but upon arrival he learns that there is not a single employee at the base. They all disappeared somewhere, but he meets something that is clearly not happy for him. We will have to help Jack escape by preserving what he discovered, as well as learn the secret of what Fort Solis was created for. The hero will have to unravel the secrets of this place and get out of there alive. The game has multiple endings, and the consequences of your actions will affect the course of the story. Scorn, Lubomir Pekler had a dream to create his own game. Inspired by the works of Geiger and Beksinski, Lovecraft and Kafka, Camus and Heidegger, Lubomir, together with like-minded people, began to create a game about a living, biomechanical world. The project originated in such a distant 2013 and was named SCORN. This is not an AAA game. At first, only 4 people worked on it, after which the studio expanded. The creators of SCORN believe that the game can be considered an AA title. So, trailer after trailer, the transfer for the release was constantly shifting, but finally, the dream was destined to come true. However, the estimated time to complete the SCORN will be between 6 to 8 hours. The creators of the game emphasized that this is an average figure, which will vary depending on the style of play and the speed of solving puzzles. SCORN will not have a photo mode. However, the horror has a very minimalistic interface, so players will be able to take high-quality screenshots right during the passage. The original SCORN concepts that the developers showed off in 1914 helped shape the basic principles of the game's design. Since then, these materials have been redesigned, improved, and modernized. SCORN is a horror game, not a shooter, so most of the weapon options serve as a tool to advance the story. In addition to unique alien weapons, SCORN will feature several recognizable weapons, including a pistol, shotgun, and grenade launcher. With their help, players will be able to destroy the encountered monsters. Killing absolutely all enemies with firearms will not work, since the ammo in SCORN is a limited resource. The developers specifically made sure that the game does not turn into an action game. Already on October 21st, players will be able to immerse themselves in a world where every corridor is an esophagus, and every column is a structure assembled from the bones and muscles of creatures alien to the eye of ordinary people. I really hope that SCORN will live up to our expectations, and the creator of the game can finally take a break after almost a decade of development. Dead Space, of course, in addition to spiritual successor, which is the Callisto Protocol, cannot be Don't Remember Dead Space itself, because Motive Studio is reworking original game from scratch. Just the announcement of the remake was enough for me to jump on the hype train, rushing through the vacuum of space straight to Ishimura. Visually, Dead Space looks just great. Motive perfectly conveys the oppressive mood and atmosphere of the original. The developers also made several interesting changes to the original, from gameplay elements from Dead Space 2 to plot twists and full-fledged voice acting by Isaac Clarke, which was not in the 2008 game. The in-game environment, as you can see, has been overhauled with new details, shaders, lighting, effects, and much more. Necromorphs are next, that is, big changes in their dismemberment system. Now, in addition to cutting off their limbs with the plasma cutter, players will be able to rip the flesh off the bones, where in the body the shot hits, the bone is exposed. In general, attention to detail is spot on. As I said, the developers also did not disregard movement in zero gravity, and it will become similar to how it was in Dead Space 2. It will be possible to move in any direction and change it with the help of micromotors. Finally, let's go over what will change in the plot and what won't. Motive is not going to change the main part of the story, because it has already become a cult. Instead, the authors plan to expand the plot a bit using the universe of Dead Space, and these are not only other parts of the trilogy, but also comics, books, and anime that expand the lore. In addition, more attention will be paid to other characters. For example, Isaac will not only be looking for Nicole, so to speak, but will also be able to find out what happened to her during the outbreak. I'm more than intrigued, and thankfully it won't be too long to wait. Dead Space Remake is due out at the end of January next year. The Callisto Protocol lets close our eyes to the fact that Glenn Schofield, the father of the Dead Space series, said that the events of the Protocol will no longer unfold in the PUBG universe. Moreover, it does not affect the plot in any way. The Callisto Protocol takes place in the year 2320, when mankind began to actively explore space and began to colonize. The main character is Jacob Lee, the pilot of a cargo ship that carries a mysterious cargo. The ship crashes on Callisto, a moon of Jupiter, and Jacob ends up in a huge local prison called the Black Iron. It soon turns out that something terrible happened on Callisto, and mutated people, the so-called biophages, filled the entire prison. The developers from Striking Distance promise us a terrifying, dark and violent game, which is not surprising, given the past work of Mr. Schofield. The goal of the developers is to constantly keep the players on their toes, which will be helped not only by the atmosphere and the element of surprise, but also by the feeling of helplessness. Each encounter with the enemy should feel like a fight for one's own life, and ammunition, weapons, and health kits will be rare and valuable. In creating the environment, the developers used artificial intelligence, which is engaged in generative design. The AI took human-made objects, from doors to weapons to vehicles, and optimized their design for maximum efficiency, making them more unusual in appearance, but believable. Routine the game, believe it or not, was announced about 10 years ago. A couple of gameplay teasers, but that's it. But the time loop has passed and now it is preparing for release again. In Routine, players have to visit an abandoned base on the moon, created from a vision of the future of the 80s, in order to find out the reason for the strange events that took place there. The developers told the plot of this whole mysterious story: when life on the lunar station subsides, an easy walk turns into a desperate struggle for survival. And the search for answers brings you face to face with an enemy who sees you as the main threat to his plans. When any finds open up new abysses in front of you, there is only one thing left: to go forward. During the passage, you have to explore the lunar station, where terrible things happen. Apparently, crazy androids are waiting for the hero there. The character will be able not only to hide, but also to fight with the help of various devices. Gradually, new opportunities will open up. And the minimalistic interface allows you to dive deeper into the exciting and creepy atmosphere of the game. For the soundtrack meets the legendary and furious composer Doom McGordon. And the game looks, I don't know, well, just like the successor to Alien, Isolation. If it is different and of the same high quality, then I will already add it to the wishlist. Silent Hill 5, of course, the alleged revival of Silent Hill is associated not only with a remake of the second game. According to rumors, a new part of Silent Hill is also in development. According to the leaks, this is a first-person survival horror game, allegedly being created by a well-known Japanese studio. Screenshots have been leaking online, and maybe we'll get an announcement in the not-too-distant future. Considering how many times these rumors about Silent Hill have turned out to be empty, you need to proceed with caution so as not to get burned again. But as they say, there is no smoke without fire, so let's clench our fists and hope for the best. For adrenaline, thrills, and to sweat a little, they go not only to competitive shooters. This function is performed by a whole genre in survival horror. The main characters of such games are trying to survive, finding themselves in an incomprehensible place, it is not clear why, and not of their own free will. Do you remember when Resident Evil 4 was horror? Don't remember? All simply because he never was. At one time, the original Resident Evil 4 managed to divide the fans of the series into two camps, but in any case, the 4 and to this day is considered one of the greatest games in the history of action horror. That is why now making a worthy remake of such a game is clearly not a trivial task, but do not worry. The same team behind the amazing RE2 remake is in charge of development. Capcom is trying to set the remake of the legendary game a dark mood of hopelessness and loneliness. The new Resident Evil 4 is being developed on the RE engine, so the atmosphere is guaranteed to be much darker. Character models, objects, and environments look incredibly realistic and harsh, trying their best to instill horror in the player. The Japanese have not yet shared the details, but judging by the trailers and great graphics, we are waiting for a game with a much darker and more frightening atmosphere than the original. It's a lot easier to make a remake scary, though, because 2005's RE4 focused more on action and intense gunplay than survival and horror. Considering how well the second and third parts of my favorite series have been updated, I am optimistic about the release in order to once again save the world from biological contagion. Layers of Fear. For their first big Unreal Engine 5 project, the Bloober team decided to return to the Layers of Fear franchise. The main character, an unnamed artist, travels through surreal locations and hears the voice of a certain girl. The authors described Layers of Fears as a chronicle of psychological nightmares and said that the previous parts of the series will form the basis of the game, but it will be completely independent and tell a different story. Apparently, the title will be something between a remaster and a sequel. The game should be an exciting and meaty horror, using ray tracing, 4K resolution, HDR, and the Lumen system, which helps in working with global illumination and reflections in projects on Unreal Engine 5. We will find out what horrors this time were born in the morbid mind chambers of another artist in early 2023 when the game launches on Xbox Series X/S, PS5 and PC.